In this episode for my series, Headrush versus Helix versus Kemper, we're going to talk about tone and feel. Believe it or not, how the guitar, the strings, and the interaction between the pick and the strings feels is just as important as how good everything sounds. And it doesn't matter what you're playing through, whether it's an amp sim, a modeler, a profile, or a real amp. All that stuff counts when you're playing. It has to be equal. You know, you have to have great sound and great feel. And what we're going to do is check out how these units stack up in that regard. Now, what I did is I put them all through the same exact impulse response from Live Ready Sound. The impulse response is a Mesa 2x12 with Celestion Vintage 30s in it. The mics that were used in this impulse response are a Royer 121 and an SM57 by Shure. And stay tuned to the end, because what I did with these three units is I picked the most brutal tone that I could get out of all three of them and used the same impulse response again in these units. And I used different amps in each unit just because, once again, I'm picking the most brutal tone that I could get out of them. And I'm kind of pinning them up against each other. I know they're all different amps, but I just wanted to show you how brutal these units can get and see how they stack up. So now let's go to my living room and I'll show you how I dialed everything in and share my thoughts about what I'm experiencing in that process. For this segment of the episode, I've dialed in the Kemper, the Helix, and the Headrush with the same amp model or profile, and I dialed them in independent of each other, not to make them sound similar, but to make them sound the best that they can independently. So now that I have them all dialed in, what I'm going to do is play the same riff through each one and just get a feel of how things are going on there regarding sound and feel. And then after I play it, I might do a couple other riffs, and then I'll just share what I'm experiencing both sonically and with how everything feels. And don't put a lot of value in what you're hearing is regarding audio. It's just my camera mic that's picking everything up. I'm just doing this to show you that I am actually doing tests on my Friedman cabs here in the living room, and dialing everything in, and just sharing my first impressions of how everything sounds after everything's been dialed in. So let's get started with the Helix. Okay, so what I had to do, the reason why I was doing those rakes is because earlier, before I did the major high cut on the impulse response on the Helix, the rakes were just killing my ears. There was a lot of like really brittle kind of brashness out of them. So I turned the high cut all the way down to 8 kilohertz. So that was a pretty substantial cut, but it's not unheard of, to be fair. So that's what I had to do to kind of get rid of that harshness. Other than that, what I'm hearing is pretty good. The feel is not as chewy as I would like. I don't really feel the pick really digging in like I like it, but it's definitely a good enough feel for me to play. And it supports what I'm playing pretty well. Not as well as I would like, but enough, if that makes sense. So, and as far as the tone goes, it's decent, it works. There's nothing really that's bothering me about it, especially since I did the high cut. I did not do a low cut on it. I didn't see it necessary. There is a roundness here that's not really my favorite thing about the tone, but it's not like bothering me so bad that I think it's, you know, it's just not usable. I mean, it's just not preferred. I'll just put it to you that way. So as far as how I would rate this in the room here, I would say that it's decent. I would give it a pretty solid B-. I mean, that's what I would give it grade-wise. So it's decent, you know, and conversely, there's probably people that would absolutely love this and think it's perfectly fine. And there's people like me who actually I have the Synergy module, so I'm very familiar in how the real tubes actually feel, sound, and react to my playing. So I do prefer that, and there is definitely a difference here. Is it a huge difference? No, but it's a noticeable one. So let's go on to the Headrush now and see how that goes. Not bad. It's actually pretty good. It definitely supported what I was playing very well. I didn't really feel a lot of chewiness, but there is a slight amount of pick attack that stands out that is good. I wish it had more, and I wish it had more chewiness, and I also wish it had more depth. But it's a passable tone, and once again, it felt pretty good to play. And I also didn't have to do any high cuts on the impulse response. So when I was doing those rakes, I didn't hear anything stinging my ears, so it wasn't bright or brash at all. But on the other side of those things, I wish it had more pick attack, more chewiness, more reactive feel, and I wish it wasn't as flat and maybe two-dimensional as it is. In other words, it's lacking some aggression that I really like to hear and feel when I'm playing. It is, again, a little bit flat. So is this tone optimal? I wouldn't say it's optimal, but it's definitely passable. All right, so here we go with the Kemper. There it is, right there. It's super full. There's like a lot of fullness. And when I did the pick rakes, when I just raked it up really hard, there was nothing bothering my ears. There was a softness to the highs, and I did no high cuts on the impulse response. Zero. I left it alone. There's nothing done to the impulse response at all. No high cuts, no low cuts, nothing. It's just I dragged and dropped it in, didn't touch it. And the chewiness is there. It's really chewy. It's really aggressive. There's a lot of aggression coming out of the speakers right now. It's very fat and responsive, and it supported my playing in a way that I really wanted to. I mean, I didn't feel like anything was fighting me when I was playing. I didn't feel like I had to pull things out of the Kemper to help it. You know, like the whole help me, help you kind of thing was not going on there. It just was there, and it really felt great to play. And there's a third dimension here. Like the other two units, especially when you play them side by side, you really notice that the other two units are like a two-dimensional type product, where the Kemper is a three-dimensional type product. There's depth there. There's texture that the other two units don't have. And unless you've really tried playing through a Kemper through a really good profile, because the Kemper is only as good as the profiles that are in it, truthfully. So if you get a chance to play a Kemper and you get a really good profile, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be like, yep, there's that texture, there's that really great added aggression, that really good chewiness when you're playing the notes, especially when you're palm muting. It's all there, and there's no real harsh brashness coming off of the speakers at all. It's just a really good, balanced, full, aggressive sound that is what you're looking for when you're playing metal and really heavy tones like this. So as far as the grade goes that I would give this, I'd give it a solid A. I mean, definitely. Basically, there's nothing here that doesn't please me at all. It's absolutely fantastic. So out of the three so far, as far as playing in my living room, I very much prefer the Kemper. All right, so now everything's dialed in, and let's see how they all sound on an isolated track. Just so you know, there's no pre or post processing done to these tracks at all. What you're hearing is the raw guitar tone. Alright, as promised, here, in my opinion, is the most brutal tone that I could get out of all three of these units. All right, let me just sum it up like this. As far as the winner goes, by leaps and bounds, it's the Kemper. The other two are pretty far behind regarding tone and feel. I found that the Headrush and the Helix were both lacking in texture, in dimension, and in feel. The Kemper had way more depth, way more dimension, way better feel. It was super chewy and responsive when I played, and it had a lot more texture than the other two units did. And I know what some of you are thinking, like, well, in a mix, none of that matters. Well, I have to respectfully, majorly disagree with that. In a mix, it matters even more, because what you need for your guitar tone to sound aggressive and full and have all that really nice texture is to have a lot of that when it's soloed, when it's by itself, so that when you put it in a mix, all the other instruments don't drown all of those characteristics out of your guitar tone. So if you're going in a mix with an already textureless and kind of dull and rounded out guitar tone, how much more dull and rounded out and two-dimensional is it going to sound in a mix when you got all the other instruments with it? So you want a guitar tone with a ton of character in it, and the Kemper out of these three units provides that in spades. So between the three, again, the Kemper was majorly better, and the other two are good, but there's a pretty big difference between the Headrush, the Helix, and the Kemper. Now, between the Helix and the Headrush, I'd pretty much have to score them like this. The Helix sounded a little bit better and felt a little bit better than the Headrush. It's almost negligible, but I have to be fair and say that there was a difference and it was noticeable. But again, I think with some tweaking, you could probably get them even closer. But that said, I think that if you bought either unit, you would be equally satisfied with them regarding the tone and the feel. But here's where the scales start tipping in the favor of the Helix a little bit more, because between the two, the Helix has definitely more amps to choose from. Now, I know with the update with the Headrush, they are going to add some more amps, and Helix has an update coming up pretty soon where they're going to add another amp as well. So it's probably still going to be, they're both going to be here, and they're both going to advance like this. So one's still going to be above the other regarding choices, and that would be the Helix. So I have to score the Helix better as far as variety and availability goes regarding the amp sims. But again, playability, tone, feel, all that, they're pretty much almost even. It's kind of negligible between those two when it comes to those things. Well, I really hope you guys like this, and I really look forward to reading and responding to your comments in this video, because I really want to know what you think about this whole thing as far as how they sound, how they feel, and all that kind of stuff. And if you've got experience comparing them, please share your experience in the comments below. I really look forward to reading those and responding to them as well. And to all my subscribers, thank you very much. I really appreciate you. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, because I got a lot of great stuff coming up, and I'll see you on the next one.